The entire executive floor was decked out with blue and silver balloons, our company colors, of course. The conference room featured a massive cake with 500% growth scripted in blue icing. Everyone was clapping, smiling, staring at me, literally giving me a standing ovation as I walked in. 500% growth in 18 months during a recession. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the moment when all those late-night strategy sessions and skipped vacations finally count. My boss, Luther, our CEO, put his arm around me, squeezing my shoulder, beaming that proud father smile I'd chased for 3 years. Absolutely exceptional work, he said. Let's hear it again for the growth our marketing team has achieved. More applause, someone whistled, and my whole team looked at me with a mix of respect and validation, like they'd backed the right horse. Luther raised his hand for silence. Today marks a turning point for our company, he said in his announcement voice, the one that usually precedes bonuses or organizational shifts. With this momentum, we need fresh, forward-thinking leadership to take us to the next level. I nodded, thinking he was leading up to my promotion, the VP position they'd dangled for 18 months. Then the door opened, and in walked this kid. Literally a kid. 20-something, perfect haircut, designer suit slightly too big. Luther's smile widened. I'd like to introduce everyone to Drew, my son. He'll be taking over as our new vice president of marketing, effective immediately. The silence in the room was suffocating. Drew walked straight to me, hand extended. I've heard so much about you, he said. Dad says you've built an incredible foundation for me to build on. Foundation like I was the dici. Concrete poured so this Nepo baby could stack his corner office on top. I shook his hand, smiled, congratulated him, even as the emails I'd sent that morning to our 5 biggest clients were already sitting in their inboxes and lunch meetings lined up for next week. Hey, I'm Naomi Reed, 34, and if you're wondering whether I'm the villain or hero, honestly, I've stopped caring. Before I get into what happened next, hit that like button and subscribe, because this gets messy and it's a ride worth taking. Leave a comment if you've ever had your work stolen by someone who never had to earn a thing. I read every single one. So, back to that conference room. Everyone's eating cake, awkwardly congratulating this kid who's never managed so much as a lemonade stand, while I'm standing there with my career bleeding out on the floor. 3 years at this company, 12-hour days, working through pneumonia last winter because we couldn't miss our targets. When people start clearing out, Luther pulls me aside. Naomi, I need you to help Drew transition. Show him the ropes. Introduce him to the clients. You know. I nod, but inside I'm thinking about the fact that I've just been demoted without actually changing my title. I'd be doing the VP job while Junior gets all the credit. Of course, I say. Happy to help Drew succeed. Luther squeezes my shoulder again. You're a team player, Naomi. That's what I've always appreciated about you. Team player. The corporate euphemism for a woman who doesn't complain when we screw her over. I go back to my office, close the door, and just sit there. Not crying, not screaming, just eerily calm, because something inside me had finally snapped clean off. You know that feeling when disappointment is so complete that it wraps around and becomes clarity? That's where I was. Crystal clear clarity. My phone buzzes. It's a text from my friend Ela in accounting. WTF just happened. Call me ASAP. I don't call her. Instead, I open my laptop and pull up the dossier I'd been compiling for 6 months. See, I wasn't stupid. I'd seen the writing on the wall when Luther started bringing Drew to quarterly meetings, when he'd interrupt my presentations with fresh perspectives from his son who'd never worked a day in this industry. The dossier had everything. Client relationships, campaign strategies, but most importantly, it had the truth about our biggest client, Westbrook Industries. They represented 40% of our revenue, and Luther had been falsifying performance metrics to keep them on board. I discovered it by accident 3 months earlier, and instead of reporting it, I documented everything. Insurance policy, I told myself. Drew knocks on my office door at 4:30 that afternoon. Hey, got a minute? Dad thought we should start the transition today. He sits across from me, one leg crossed over the other, examining his manicured fingernails. So, what should I know first? I smile. Warm. Professional. Well, let's start with our client roster. Why don't we go through them one by one? For the next hour, I give him exactly what he's expecting. Surface-level overviews. Nothing he couldn't get from reading our quarterly reports. He takes a few notes, mostly nods, and checks his phone at least a dozen times. Great. This is super helpful, he finally says, standing. Dad's taking me to dinner with the Westbrook team next week. Maybe you could prep me before that. Actually, I say, I've already scheduled a lunch with Marcus Westbrook tomorrow. Routine check-in. Why don't you join us? Drew looks briefly panicked. Tomorrow, I have a golf thing with your fraternity brothers. I finish for him. No problem. I'll reschedule for next week so you can join. Relief washes over his face. That would be great. Thanks. After he leaves, I send a text to Marcus Westbrook. Looking forward to our lunch tomorrow. I have some important information to discuss. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my balcony 15 floors up, watching the city lights and thinking about loyalty, about value, about what happens when you pour everything into a company that treats you as disposable. My sister calls around midnight. Mom said you sounded off on the phone. Everything okay? I tell her about the promotion, about Drew, about standing there eating cake that celebrated my accomplishments while simultaneously marking my irrelevance. Quit, she says immediately. With your track record, you could walk into any marketing firm in the city. It's not that simple, I tell her. Why not? Why not indeed, I think. Pride? The 3 years I'd invested? The unfinished business? I'm not done there yet, is all I say. The next morning, I dress carefully. Dark blue suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. Professional, forgettable. The kind of woman who gets passed over for promotions. Marcus Westbrook is already at the restaurant when I arrive. 50-something, old money, the kind of man who refers to women in business as gals without irony. His company had been with our firm for a decade. Naomi, he says, standing to greet me. Always a pleasure. Luther tells me you've been doing exceptional work. I smile. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. For the next 20 minutes, I walk him through his company's actual performance metrics versus what we'd been reporting. I show documentation, email trails. The discrepancies are significant enough that, if Westbrook had been making decisions based on our falsified data, it could constitute fraud. Marcus's face gets progressively redder. Are you telling me Luther has been lying to me for 3 years? Not 3 years, I correct him. The falsification began 18 months ago when I took over the department and started implementing changes that would actually generate real growth. Why are you showing me this? He demands. You realize this could terminate our contract? I take a sip of water, calm, measured. I'm starting my own firm. Smaller, more focused, with complete transparency. I'd like Westbrook to be my first client. He stares at me. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Stay with a company that's been deceiving you, or move to one founded on honesty. I'm not asking for an answer today. Think about it. I slide my new business card across the table. Simple, elegant. Reed Strategy Group in silver lettering. I'd had them printed 2 months ago. One more thing, I add. I've accepted a lunch invitation with Luther and his son next week. I haven't mentioned any of this to them. What exactly are you playing at? Marcus asks, pocketing my card. I'm not playing, I reply. That's the difference between me and Luther. Over the next 5 days, I meet with our other 4 major clients. Each meeting follows the same pattern: documentation of discrepancies, my new business card, no pressure for an immediate decision. Drew shadows me around the office, asking basic questions about marketing strategies I'd implemented years ago. I answer everything thoroughly, professionally. I introduce him to the team, explain workflows, walk him through our analytics platforms. "You're being really cool about all this," he says on Friday afternoon. "Dad thought you might be difficult." "Why would I be difficult? It's just business, right?" He nods, relieved. "Exactly. Just business." The following Tuesday is the lunch with Westbrook, Luther, Drew, Marcus, and me. We meet at Delano's, the overpriced steakhouse where Luther always entertains important clients. Luther orders expensive wine, talks about golf, introduces Drew as the fresh blood our company needs. Marcus is polite, but reserved. He glances at me occasionally, but I keep my expression neutral. "So," Luther says eventually, "Drew will be taking over the Westbrook account personally. We want to give you our top-tier attention." Marcus dabs his mouth with his napkin. "Actually, Luther, I've been meaning to discuss our contract." Luther's smile doesn't falter, but his eyes sharpen. "Of course, we're always open to adjustments." "It's not an adjustment, we're terminating." The silence that follows is even more profound than the one in that balloon-filled conference room. Luther's smile freezes. "Terminating? Marcus, we've been partners for a decade. If there's an issue, the issue is integrity," Marcus interrupts. "Or rather, your lack of it." Luther's eyes flick to me, then back to Marcus. "I don't understand. Naomi has shown me the actual performance metrics for our campaigns compared to what you've been reporting to us." Drew looks confused. "What's he talking about, Dad?" Luther's face has gone pale. "Marcus, whatever you think you've seen, I'm sure there's a simple explanation." "Save it," Marcus says, standing. "We've already signed with Reed Strategy Group, effective immediately." He nods at me, drops his napkin on the table, and walks out. The look Luther gives me: if hatred could burn, I'd be ash on that restaurant floor. "What did you do?" he whispers. I take a sip of the expensive wine he ordered. "Nothing you wouldn't have done. It's just business, right?" I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. That one client was enough to make my point. But revenge is like those fancy multi-course meals. Once you've had a taste, you want the full menu. Before Luther could even process what happened with Westbrook, the other 4 clients called, terminating, all signing with Reed Strategy Group. So here's where you need to decide if you're with me for the rest of this story, because it gets darker. If you're still here, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me if you think I went too far or not far enough. After that lunch, where Westbrook publicly fired Luther's firm, the restaurant staff practically had to peel him off the ceiling. His face went through this fascinating color transformation, white to red, to a disturbing shade of purple I'd never seen on a human being before. "You ungrateful bitch," he hissed across the table. "After everything I've done for you?" Drew just sat there, mouth slightly open, looking between us like he was watching a tennis match he never bought tickets for. I placed my napkin on the table and stood. "Thank you for the opportunity, Luther." And Drew. I turned to him with my most professional smile. "Best of luck with your new position. I'm sure you'll grow into it." As I walked out, I could hear Luther already on his phone, voice tight with panic, probably calling his lawyers. But here's the beautiful thing about documentation. I had copies of everything. Every falsified report, every email where Luther directed me to adjust numbers, every single receipt. By the time I reached my car, my phone was blowing up. First Illa from accounting. "What did you do?" Then my team members, one after another. then the COO. I turned my phone off and drove straight to my new office space, a modest suite I'd leased 2 weeks earlier. The next morning, the company's stock had dropped 12%. Losing 5 major clients representing over 70% of your revenue will do that. Luther called me 17 times. I let every call go to voicemail. On the 18th call, I picked up. "You have exactly 30 seconds, I said. "Name your price," he growled. "Whatever you want. Come back, bring the clients, and I'll make you executive vice president." I actually laughed. "That's your offer? A better title at a company that's currently in freefall." "What do you want, Naomi? Money? Take it. A board seat? It's yours." I wanted recognition for my work. I told him I wanted what I'd earned, but you couldn't stand the idea that a woman built something valuable in your company, could you? So, you handed it to your son, who couldn't tell a marketing strategy from a grocery list. This isn't about Drew. It's exactly about Drew, and your ego, and the fact that you think loyalty only flows upward. "I'll sue you for client theft," he threatened, "for corporate espionage." "Go ahead," I said calmly, "and I'll submit all my evidence of fraud to the SEC, see who comes out worse." After a long silence, he asked, "Is that what this is? Blackmail?" "No, Luther. This is consequences." I hung up and blocked his number. Over the next month, my new company grew faster than I'd anticipated. Not just with the 5 clients I'd taken, but with 3 more who'd heard through industry channels what had happened. Turns out Luther had been playing the same games with multiple clients. My former team members started reaching out one by one. First Amara, my brilliant analytics manager, then Kai, our creative director. Within 6 weeks, I'd hired 7 people from my old department, bringing their expertise, client relationships, and most importantly, their loyalty. The messages from Luther came through other channels, mutual connections, industry events, all the same theme. He was willing to settle, to make peace. I ignored them all. Then, one evening after everyone had left the office, there was a knock on my door. It was Drew. He looked different, thinner, the expensive suit now properly tailored but somehow less shiny, the swagger replaced with something approaching humility. "Can we talk?" he asked. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. 5 minutes. He sat down, rubbing his palms on his knees. "The company's filing for Chapter 11 next week." I nodded. This wasn't news to me. I still had friends in their finance department. "Dad's being investigated by the SEC," he continued, "and 3 other clients have filed lawsuits." "That sounds like a Luther problem," I said. Drew looked up, meeting my eyes directly for perhaps the first time. "I didn't know about the falsified reports, I swear." "Would it have mattered if you did?" He thought about it, then shook his head slowly. "Probably not. Not then." At least he was honest. "I'm not here to ask for your help," he said. "Or forgiveness. I wanted you to know that I see it now. What he did to you. What I was part of." I studied him for a moment. "Why? Are you really here, Drew?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. "This has everything. Dad's offshore accounts, the shell companies, the client lists he's been hiding from the board. He's been siphoning money for years." I didn't reach for it. "Why give this to me?" "Because you're the only one who wasn't afraid to stand up to him," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "And because I've spent my entire life watching him crush people who got in his way, including my mom." This was new information. Luther's ex-wife had vanished from the company narrative years ago. "He drove her to a breakdown," Drew continued, "then used it to get full custody of me and control of her shares in the company. He's not a good person, and I don't want to be him anymore." I finally took the flash drive. "What do you expect me to do with this?" "Whatever you think is right," he said, standing. That's all I wanted to say. After he left, I sat there turning the flash drive over in my hands. I should have felt triumph, vindication. Instead, I felt tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes after months of channeling rage into action. I plugged in the flash drive. Drew hadn't exaggerated. Luther had been stealing from his own company for over a decade, millions siphoned through elaborate financial schemes, client contracts with hidden clauses, evidence of tax fraud that would make an IRS agent salivate. What happened next is where people usually divide on whether I'm the villain or the hero in this story. I didn't go to the SEC. I didn't call the police. Instead, I called Elliot Westmore, the business reporter who'd been covering Luther's company's decline. "I have a story for you," I said, "but I need certain assurances." The next morning, his exposé hit. It detailed every aspect of Luther's fraud, except the parts involving his son. The article mentioned an anonymous insider who provided documentation. By noon, Luther's company had halted trading. By evening, he was being led out of his office building by federal agents, cameras flashing in his face. I watched it all unfold on the news, sitting in my living room with a glass of wine. No cheering, no celebration, just closure. 3 days later, Drew showed up at my office again. "Thank you," he said simply, "for leaving me out of it." I nodded. "What will you do now?" He shrugged. "Start over somewhere new. Maybe actually learn the business from the ground up. Good luck with that." He turned to leave, then paused. "He always said you were the smartest person in the company. Even before everything, he was afraid of you. I think he should have been afraid of underestimating me," I replied. After Drew left, Amara came into my office. "Was that who I think it was?" "Yes." I looked out my window at the city skyline and thought, nothing. It's over. But it wasn't quite over. The industry fallout continued for months. Luther's trial became a cautionary tale in business ethics courses. His company was acquired for pennies on the dollar by a competitor. Former employees scattered to various firms, many landing at mine. 6 months after I started Reed Strategy Group, we moved to a larger office. A year later, we were handling accounts twice the size of my former clients. I hired 30 people, then 50. On the second anniversary of that balloon-filled conference room humiliation, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a news clipping about Luther's sentencing. 15 years for fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Scrawled at the bottom, in handwriting I didn't recognize. "The house of cards always falls eventually." I never found out if it was from Drew or someone else. It didn't matter. Last month, Reed Strategy Group was acquired by one of the largest marketing conglomerates in the country. The terms included full autonomy for me and my team, and a board seat for yours truly. The press release cited our unprecedented growth and industry-leading client retention. The irony isn't lost on me. I built something from the ashes of betrayal that ended up more valuable than what was taken from me. So, that's my story. Not a clean, neat revenge fantasy where I walked away into the sunset after destroying my enemy. The reality was messier, more complicated. It cost me friendships, sleep, and probably a few years off my life from stress. Was it worth it? I still ask myself that question. Luther lost everything. His company, his freedom, his reputation. His son lost his inheritance and his name. I gained a successful company and industry respect. But the woman who stood in that conference room eating celebration cake while being publicly replaced, she's gone. In her place is someone harder, sharper, less willing to trust. If there's a lesson here, maybe it's this. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't what you do to others, but what you build from what they tried to take from you. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. I'd love to know in the comments whether you think I went too far, not far enough, or if you've ever had to rebuild after someone tried to destroy what you created. Your stories matter to me because they remind me that mine isn't unique. We're all fighting battles others can't see. Thank you for listening. This is Naomi Reed, reminding you that the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served successful.